that that's what I'm very grateful for. I've always been a character-driven writer,
Yeah.
which is why when you start messing with characters, I'm like, no, wait. It's also why I struggle reading most fantasy, because it's not always about character. It's about character tropes.
Yeah.
And it's also the characters are just kind of a tool to tell the story that you want to tell about defeating the big evil lord. And I'm like, but I care about your characters. And look, this is, I know, I know you've mentioned on Twitter that you don't like the way they're breaking formula with The Mandalorian. I mean, my theory as for why we got episode 3 with Dr. Pershing is they made the whole Coruscant set with the top of the mountain and everything for the Grogu flashback. And then they were like, no, wait, we need to actually use this for something. And then we got the Pershing episode. But
we're going to derail so hard. Let's get back to what's, it's like we don't want to go to the next place because we're in the true terribleness, right?
Okay,
we're in the part where it's a part at the seams. It's not just the women they don't know what to do with at this point. Gold's a hot mess too.
This is when Gold this is when Gold started to get to that back and forth point where it was that gambit.
Yeah.
What is he doing? But it never, I don't know. So I'm looking through the season 5 episodes just because I've been checking them out to make sure we're covering everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to say, so season 5 episode 7 was the flashback to Merlin and the first dark one.
Oh yeah. And see, block that too.
This is when I realized the trick behind Once Upon a Time, a trick that had gotten very stale. So you have Merlin, you have Nimue, and you have this random other person.
Right.
And you're supposed to think that the random other person, who does not matter to the story, is going to be the first dark one.
Right.
Except I'm watching this episode and I'm going, no, he's too obvious. Well, who's it gonna be? Who would be the most quote unquote shocking, but not actually shocking because you see it coming if you know the story? Well, it's going to be Nimue. And even then, I know my Arthurian legend enough to know Nimue is bad news for Merlin.
Right.
So yeah, she became the dark one. And I'm like, okay, well, I called that 20 minutes ago. I'm bored now.
Yeah, I guess they were treating their audience like it was stupid. But like once you do that, we know what's happening. Get to it already.
But it's also just when you do so many twists, the audience starts expecting the twist.
And then you get into subverting expectations. Yeah. And that's when they see, to me, this is sort of the Lost thing. It became clear then that they had an ending, but they didn't really have an ending, and they weren't adapting their ending based on the twists and turns the show took.
And that's something you really, especially if you are going to serialize, you need to have an idea where you're going, but you also need to be able to adapt.
Yeah.
And ironically,
you have to continue refreshing as it moves.
And I see that not even just in serialized shows, sometimes you can read a book or watch a movie where you think you get to the end and it's like you were set on this ending, but getting there doesn't make sense. So it's pretty clear you knew where you were going, but the story you wrote didn't actually go there. So you just tried to force it.
That happens a lot. And I really think that's a format problem, not a plot problem. You just don't explain your ending. And sometimes it is a plot problem. Sometimes you actually do have to change your ending. I mean, okay, I wrote Boss Fight with, I think it was 6 different possible endings based on voter choices. And this is why I do video games and not series. Because I must have an ending before I start, or I have a really hard time doing bad things to characters. Mistreating Solomon killed me.
I mean, Solomon has been through so much. You just want to wrap him up with a blanket, give him hot chocolate, put on a movie, and say, "Please just stay here. We're not in the cave, boy.
Stay in the that's exactly what I'm going for. But man, being in that headspace is hard.
Well,
I almost broke into tears singing that fucking Wilson Phillips song for that stupid interstitial video.
Well, ironically, I said put on a movie, and then I'm like, no, actually, a movie may not be a good idea because he might get triggered.
Well, it has to be one of those. Well, yes, something will trigger him, but it has to be one of those very soft and comforting, like Doris Day movies. But he couldn't do that either because of the very gendered tropes. And oh my God, this poor boy. Read him a bedtime
Care
story.
Bears.
Yeah. Care Bears. Care Bears, he'd be okay. Anything furries would probably be safe for him.
Well, there still might be this is commercialization to sell toys to children, but
but if you watch Princess Sparkle Pony in that show, Princess Sparkle Pony is constantly like back patting.
Yes, I did notice that.
Because even the soul-eating demon pony feels like he needs a hug. But it was very hard for me to do, and I think that's good as a creator. It always makes me think a creator's a horrible person when they seem to delight in doing horrible things to their characters instead of recognizing, yes, into each life some rain must fall. But you need the moments of joy too. It's the premium cable problem, right? And I do think Once Upon a Time got to primetime drama with their plots, in that when one terrible thing is happening to one group of characters, it's okay for another group to be okay for a while. The audience understands struggle, but no one can take it on an ongoing basis.
And right? This is Elle part of what
so tortured by that point. I actually felt bad for her.
Who?
Belle.
Belle deserved so much better.
Yeah. Belle got, and it just felt to me like they ran out of ideas.
Also, their son showed up because Belle and Gold had a son.
Yeah.
But like he was
taken
by the Black Fairy, who may or may not have. Oh no, she was Gold's mother.
Yeah.
Again, the family tree is way too complicated.
The kidnapped baby is a family tradition.
And then he comes back as an adult. And admittedly, when he first showed up, I'm like, is this Morpheus?
Yeah.
Because this was like, I don't remember. I think this was the Hades arc. So I'm like, is this?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. The Hades arc turned into the Black Fairy arc.
It was the point in the show, though, that it started being really interesting composite characters that showed sort of an awareness of form, in that, okay, so you have to have the mythical creature. Okay, so Gold is the archetypical creature that isn't totally evil, but, because he's the beast and he's Rumpelstiltskin and... Okay.
And he's the crocodile.
That's right. That was the other one I was looking for. I liked that because it showed almost a series monomyth was forming.
Also, really quick, I made the comment about Balefire being boring, pudgy, petty criminal.
Right.
How does a boy who was raised by Hook have so little fashion sense?
I know, right? You'd think he picked up a few of his good qualities.
You'd think he'd have at least a black leather jacket.
I don't understand the Balefire thing. That it upset me so much because Henry at least had some panache. What is with Balefire?
So boring.
He has such a cool name and he doesn't wear it.
Yeah, but his modern name is Neil.
Yeah, he looks like a Neil.
A downgrade.
Yeah, he absolutely looks like a Neil. Like Balefire was just, I don't know what that was. I don't think they did. And I
also,
think
Mila was not worth the rivalry between Gold and Hook.
no, but also I think it was they were really trying to shoehorn a humanization story in instead of just letting that drip out with other things. Like, let him do it in the acting.
Also, could we not think of another reason for a rivalry between Captain Hook and the crocodile other than a woman?
Yeah, that's not really feminist, is it? I mean,
Not really.
this is where I get into I have to be very careful that I don't make my version of feminism the default. And it's not real feminism if it's not doing it my way.
The problem is a lot of what seems to be mainstream now is that pop black pill feminism, which isn't.
Well,
It's
that's not my way, certainly. My question is, my test is, does a trope, for instance, in this case, two men fighting over a girl, does it bring something out in the characters, or do the characters seem to lose parts of themselves because of the application of the trope? At all points, all parties should be whole people. When they start, when the gender role gets so emphasized in the story that we start losing the core of the character, that's a problem from a feminist lens.
mm-hmm.
Because the core of feminism in media to me is women are whole people, no matter what. If you can tell a story about women of whole people, that's great. It doesn't matter what they do. They don't have to make a greater point about womanhood, because womanhood's too big to make a greater point about womanhood, right? That's what I cannot stand about The Handmaid's Tale. It lacks nuance. But Once Upon a Time had that great nuance in the first 2 seasons. And then something happened.
The problem, I think, is they tried appealing to that pop feminist sense where it's like, at first, it's characters. It's here's Emma, here's Snow. And Emma, something I thought about when we were doing the first part, the biggest problem with Emma is she is a victim of Snow's terrible decisions in the writing. So it's the worse Snow becomes in the writing,
right,
the worse it makes Emma look.
I also think the concept of a savior is very difficult. It's a very limited arc, right?
Yeah, and it's like they even address that where she's like, "Oh, what am I now that things are saved?" And then it's like she's not the only savior, and there've been, I want to say there was like 28 before her, but I feel like there was more than that.
I mean, Emma rapidly ran out of a reason to exist. It's funny you say it was pop feminism, though, because my theory was different. It's that they were afraid of the gay.
There is also that.
And because when did it start to crumble? When they bailed out of Mulan and Aurora. But also, they didn't embrace the fact that by modern standards, fairy tales are pretty gay. Gay boys love their fairy tales just like they love the princess stories, just like women do.
And the only canon gay couple is Ruby and Dorothy, who are not established Disney characters.
Right. And I was like, oh, please, you made Dorothy. No, it's the friend of Dorothy, not Dorothy herself. And I don't know why they bailed out of Mulan and Aurora, but they did hard. And after that, it just became so boy girl. And that's not even going back to definitely first wave feminism. Definitely second wave feminism, but there's inklings of it in the first as well. There is a strong lesbian presence in that movement, to the point that they tried to peel it away through the Lavender Menace, right? The biggest mistake Betty Friedan ever made was the whole Lavender Menace thing. She later said she was wrong about it. But there's a heavy lesbian and gender nonconforming undercurrent in feminism. And that's the thing that, maybe that's the intersection point, that pop feminism seems to be not know what to deal with the minute we start incorporating that, ironically, a really rigid gender ideology kicks in feminist movements, that you have to give up your femininity if you're a woman attracted to women. And that drives me bonkers. Right. And I do think, we have to keep in mind that these were men calling the shots. So what were the pressures on them? I don't know. But they did, it's the minute they bailed on.
I think there was some fan pressure.
And that's the other element, right? But it's weird because one of the most vocal fan groups in that was Lana Perilla's fan club. What do they call them? The Feathers?
I'm not sure.
They had a name. But yeah, she had a very, very rabid fan following, and they didn't give that fan following what they wanted. It was the Emma Swan and the Snow fangirls that got everything they wanted. And that says something too about what women are supposed to be in the minds of the show creators.
I don't know about Lana Parrilla fans, but
Regina fans.
Regina fans are called Evil Regals.
Evil Regals. Okay. Eagle. I remembered it wrong. But yeah, I really think they shafted that fandom. And to me, that's the core fandom for that show. That was the reason people liked the show. They wanted to see a woman with flaws. And Hollywood still doesn't know how to cut the shit regarding a woman with flaws. There's this idea that if a woman has flaws, she has to be punished, whereas a man with flaws has to be redeemed. And once upon a time,
usually by a woman.
Usually by a woman, right? And it's because, we can't give her a man, it'll weaken her. The evil queen never gets redeemed. And
that, I think it was yesterday or day before, I sent you a text because we've been planning this, and I said, I think I figured out Regina.
Yeah.
And her ending, they were trying to do this whole she don't need no man ending, and so they gave her a kingdom, but she's still alone.
Yeah. And
Henry is now an adult with his own kid. What does she have? She doesn't have a family. She's not even really a part of the Charming family. She's alone.
Yeah, they didn't handle blended families well either, did they?
No. Yeah. And all she wanted was to be loved. And a throne is not going to make her feel better. And so I'm like, this is one of the worst possible endings you could give her.
Yeah, they did set up that Regina very much wanted love. That was why she defied her mother. That's because otherwise she would have just been on a path and been kind of miserably content. She did what she did because she wanted things.
She would have been fine with the marriage her mother arranged for her.
And before the events of the show, based on the way Henry turned out, Regina wasn't a bad mother.
No.
He didn't want for anything. She did she cared about him. They showed again and again and again. Regina did care about Henry. And I just think where pop feminism fails is it still creates the dichotomy of you either have to be a good girl or you have to be ambitious. And the problem with that dichotomy is it's inherently telling girls that ambition is bad. And And that's why I loved Belle and I loved Ariel, because both their stories start with them wanting more. They all have the I am song where Belle says, I want adventure in the great wide somewhere. And Ariel wants to be part of, and it's not about, the song's not about Eric. The song's about the human world.
And, you know, that's something people forget about the original Cinderella too, is it wasn't that she wanted to go to the ball to meet the prince and marry the prince. It was just that she wanted a night off to go to a party.
That's right. Yeah. The prince was sort of something that just kind of happened.
Yeah. And at no point in even the original fairy tale does it say that she was waiting on a prince, which is something that you see. I think it was the 90s. Cheetah Girls especially had a song, I don't want to be like Cinderella, just sitting around waiting for a boy. And it's like, she never did that.
Well, there's a trope that's changed too, right?
Yes.
The benevolent ruler, the benevolent prince.
That
was working class. Well, there was no working class back then. That was serf wish fulfillment right there. That the prince shows in Cinderella that he is a good man by going, yeah, you girl dressed in rags. He sees her worth. He doesn't just see her clothes. He looks deeper.
Oh my God. When you watch the movie.
Right. Well, yes. Kenneth Branagh is great at women on screen. He just can't keep his hand out of the cookie jar in real life. And maybe that
is part of it. Maybe there is a level of just loving women and femininity that allows men to present it well.
With Kenneth Branagh, I think he's lonely.
Yeah.
And I think he needs a certain amount of, you done good, here's a cookie. That he inside, guys like Kenneth Branagh are Solomon. And that was what Solomon spoke to. Men have this pressure that they have to be the hero. They have to be strong and invulnerable, and that ain't real. Yeah. And so there's this, I think, well, okay, I know that a lot of the reason men in those positions cheat is they don't know how to get connections with people, period, through anything but their penis. And that's enforced on men, right? That is not something they created. They're victims as well as scumbags. I mean, Kenneth Branagh is a dog. But I do think you look at how lovingly he treats the women in his films, and not in the sexual way, in a pure way. And so it's like, why are you so terrible in real life, Kenneth Branagh? You know, why? Well, maybe that's it. Maybe he's using women to tell a story about his own desires, and that's why it connects so well. It's very personal for him. He understands it from the inside.
And I don't think it's even that the desire is bad, just that he doesn't know how to find it. And I think Hollywood is also like the worst place to find it.
I think that this idea that you can find somebody incredibly attractive, not do anything about it, and it's still good, is something Hollywood can't cope with. And it comes out in the fact that you got to cross the finish line instead of what I was hoping for, the Mulan Aurora thing, where they become extremely, you know the way they they're really good companions, nudge wink, because they couldn't make them gay. I was hoping that's what they would do, and they just disappeared them.
Here's the thing. It's Aurora and Philip show up multiple times throughout the series, just briefly. For
Yeah.
me, it's like the whole premise of the show is built up on the idea of true love
Yeah.
and the magic of true love's kiss. And Philip has already broken Aurora's curse through true love's kiss.
Right.
So it's like if they had gone through and had like basically Aurora dump Philip for Mulan, you invalidate the entire show. You
Okay, but
invalidate
you
everything
don't
the show is built on.
you don't
How
have to have you don't have to have sexual love.
true, and it's like we see
Yeah,
that in that the kiss that breaks the first curse
that's
is
right.
Emma choosing to love her son,
That's right. And they
which
forgot that part with
mhm,
Mulan and Aurora. And I think they just, for whatever reason, the only kind of stands, that word didn't exist back then, but the only stands they were willing to piss off were the Regina fans. They were fine denying them their happy ending again and again and again. And she's the main character.
they probably had some idea what they were going to do with Regina in the end.
Probably,
No,
and
I don't
didn't
know.
evolve it.
I don't know. It's
Who
like
do
the idea of
you, unless you bring Robin back to life, which would have felt really cheap, who do you put Regina with at the end?
you know, I mentioned Graham. No, that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I
It's like
mean, the
obviously
sheriff's
the
a
one I wanted
scumbag.
to see. Yeah. And I mean, technically, Regina and Graham is sexual assault.
Yes.
Um, I don't know. Emma. That
Well,
was a
that
really popular ship in the
they
fandom.
they would have had to bring in somebody very different. I would have loved it to be someone who was a craftsman. Like
Mm-hmm.
they blew through Pinocchio, but somebody like, well, he'd have to be kind of a hunky Geppetto, which people might have had a problem with, but hey, stranger things have happened. Um, but somebody who was a guy who didn't mind to sit in a room and not be the center of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think would have been right for Regina, because it's like Emma Thompson's second husband. That's him.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that doesn't mind that his wife is the star. I can't even remember his name. And that's who's right for Regina. And I'm sure because, we do have passive patriarch characters. Like a Frodo Baggins would have been perfect for Regina. Somebody who's had his adventures,
Well,
not
that was basically her father.
right. Yeah. So that would have worked,
Mm-hmm.
because her dad was a nice man, I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, they would have had to start seeding that at the beginning of season 6 to bring it in
Before
for a
then.
landing. Well, even before then, but at least season 6.
Yeah.
And I just don't think, and this is the problem with not having
Here's the
any
thing.
women involved in on the high level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you need Jen Gao in the She-Hulk writers room to come up with Daredevil as a love interest.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was thought about, man. Like, okay, guys don't notice her when she's Jen, a blind guy. Fucking brilliant. And he actually sees her.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think of it the minute they did it. Well fucking done. So much better than Tony freaking Stark in the comics. Like, come on. Oh,
Or Juggernaut.
Juggernaut I'm okay with as a fling. Tony Stark just I like him as a character, but he's slime.
He is.
He's slime. And no, first of all, Tony Stark is tolerable when he's in the being good to Pepper phases. When he's not good to Pepper, he's slime. And Yeah. And so somebody who, because, it's that whole thing of putting Wonder Woman and Superman together too. Bleh. No, they can't share the space. You need opposites attracting, not two people who are going to compete on every measure.
Also, not even just competition, but like Superman and Wonder Woman have such different worldviews.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's in Final Frontier where he comes in and she's celebrating with a bunch of women who had just murdered their captors.
Yeah.
I think it's in like South Asia or something.
Right.
And he's like, you let them commit a massacre. And she's like, they overthrew their oppressors. There is also it was women rising against men. What's the problem?
Yeah.
It's that. And even if it's not about gender, it's Diana. I mean, there's a reason in the comics she became the god of war.
Right.
She is not above violence.
No.
And
No.
she's like, if it serves a purpose, cool. It's part of her culture. You cannot pair that with the Kansas farm boy who sees the good in everything,
who is
and
constantly holding back. Yeah.
And who tries to resolve things diplomatically.
Right. Yeah.
They're just counterintuitive, and it's not a case of opposites attract. It's just complete incompatibility.
Yeah, opposites don't always attract. Opposites attract when it's that, what we said, every man's inner Solomon.
And like it's part of why Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman work as, I'm just going to use the Roman word, a triumvirate.
Right.
As three people in power.
Right.
And leading, because all three of them balance each other out.
But that gets unbalanced when two of them start sleeping together. And I actually like Diana and Bruce better than Diana and Clark.
I mean, Bruce Timm did such a good job setting them up.
Yeah,
and like I don't know if it was really in the comics before that.
I don't remember which was which, but I think it did start in the cartoon. That Batman in the cartoon, I could see it work because they both do have a bit of an elitist bent. I'm comfortable making decisions for the masses, kind of thing. I know what's right. Don't stop me. They have that in common. And that would mean that when they butt heads, they wouldn't, okay, Bruce's immaturity would become a problem with a much older goddess. So long term, it wouldn't work. But the first time, and they show it with Wonder Woman snapping Max Lord's neck, that both Clark and Bruce pile on her. And I actually threw the comic across the room and didn't touch a DC comic for months after that. I'm like, I thought it was a great moment showing why Diana's different and why they need her on the team, because Superman was killing people and she stopped it. And they blew the dismount on that, where I wanted the same thing I wanted from Once Upon a Time, some nuance. The idea that, yeah, they wouldn't have made the choice she made, but they'd have to begrudgingly accept that it might have been the best of a bad set of options. And they need her because neither of them can do that without falling totally into, in Superman's case, the abyss of fascism. In Bruce's term, he's mentally ill.
Yeah.
Right? He's mentally ill. Anybody who doesn't embrace that about Batman at this point, any guy who says the character, the persona that wears a mask is the real me, do got problems.
Yeah, there's a clip from Batman Beyond where he's talking to Terry.
Yeah.
And Terry says, so something had just happened. How did you know the voices you were hearing weren't just in your own head?
Yeah.
And Bruce says, well, for one, I know I'm not crazy. Two, the voice called me Bruce. That's not what I call myself.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
And Terry's like, yeah, but that's my name now.
Right. So, yeah.
I like Terry and Batman Beyond.
I got a Batman Beyond statue in my background for my
I
videos.
know
I
you
love
do.
Batman Beyond. Batman Beyond's the friggin' best. There's a good Batman Beyond is in some ways Once Upon a Time in Batman.
And Terry is a little snot at times, but like he's also only 16 or 17.
That's the thing when people go, "Oh, Damian Wayne's such a good foil for Batman." It's like Terry did it first and did it better.
And also Terry doesn't have the same issues that Bruce does, so he
Right.
comes at things from a saner example,
That's why I
which
thought
is
Tim
why
Drake worked too.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
why there's a point where he says to Bruce, "Do you ever wonder why Selena and Dick and Barbara, they all left you?"
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that was in the final. Batman Beyond didn't actually get a finale. It got a backdoor finale in Justice League.
Yeah.
Which I mean, at least they got their ending.
Such an underrated show.
It was
so underrated, tragically underrated. Really good show. Watch Batman. Okay, let's come in for a landing with Once Upon a Time because we are tangenting everywhere. So
shows to watch.
Well, we've been trying to fix it and sort of unsuccessfully, and I think because it ran on fumes for so long.
So here's my theory. My idea, as I've mentioned, it should have been 4, maybe 5 seasons.
Yeah.
And it should have been Cora all along.
That's right.
And you still could have had Zelina, but instead her arc with Regina should have been, oh, well, she abandoned me, but you failed her and she came back to me. And now I'm the favorite daughter. And now I'm the powerful one and I'm working for her. But Regina is like, she's using you. And that could even be Zelina's redemption. Is she starts to see that the love she wants from her mother, she doesn't have. And she could even see it in the charming family and be like, oh, no, that's what I really want. And so then you don't have to do the sexual assault arc. You don't have to do stealing her brother's man. You don't have to do the baby. You just have Zelina decide that her mother isn't worth it. And she's like, okay, I want to help you.
Right.
And then eventually, season 4 or 5, Cora breaks out of Wonderland, or they go to Wonderland and they finally defeat the big boss, and then they get the happy banquet at the end at Granny's, and voila, there's your finale.
See, I would have liked the blended family thing added too. Like, I like all of that, but okay, like you said, Henry is the product of 2 women who are very different, but Henry turns out okay.
Yeah.
And so I would have liked to see that with Zelina and Robin's baby too. That, okay, started off freaking terrible, but there's a kid involved, cut the shit. Right. And I would have liked to see the subversion of the trope of the wicked stepmother through blended families that ended up okay. Because
I think that's supposed to be implied in the season 6 finale.
Yeah, I didn't really think it, because like you said, Regina, it's a kingdom, not a family, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, how do I put this?
Season 6, not the bad season 7 soft reboot, but season 6 ends with all of them having their happy ending. And I don't think Regina's even still the mayor. I think Snow still is.
Yeah.
But it shows their lives. They're all Mary Margaret is a teacher again. So Regina is the mayor again. So she's running the town. But like in the evening, they all meet up for a potluck dinner at Granny's.
Right.
And that's how it ends. It is supposed to be this blended found family. And I think if it had ended there, it might not have been so bad.
Well, but it's like you could that hellish season 7.
Yeah. And so it's like you can still have that ending without all the mess. And then at least there would have been some consistency and it wouldn't have felt like they were jerking us all over Kingdom Come.
Yeah.
Trying to come up with these different storylines.
Yeah, I
But
think also they didn't. I see your point. I didn't see that attempt before you mentioned it, but now that you're saying it, yeah, okay, I see that they tried to do
yeah,
what
I'm
I want.
definitely not saying they did it well, but I am
Right.
saying that's what they were trying to
But that
achieve.
they did it so poorly that because of
Yeah.
that don't need no man thing. Because I do think having ambition and a primary relationship is hard.
Yes.
Trust me, it is hard not only on the woman involved, it is hard on the man involved because people say some really shitty things. You
Yeah.
know, they act like a strong woman emasculates the man in her life. And I think that with the whole wicked stepmother going into blended family metaphor, they could have made a comment on how we need modern fairy tales to deal with the shit we're dealing with now. And the fact that we're still finding comfort in stories from a time where, I mean, the evil stepmother came from somewhere. Right, that is a trope created by patriarchy because of inheritance, and they could have done something where it's like, look how far we've come, that now we can tell a story where you don't have to be the wicked stepmother, you can actually be the good stepmother. So someone like Emma can have a relationship with their kid that they abandoned eventually because you took care of them. And it doesn't have to be either or. Stop pitting women against each other.
That would be nice.
But that's the story female showrunners would have written because they know what it's like to have to be in charge. I don't think Disney was ready to go there yet. I think the closest they've, and this is not the same at all, the closest they've come is Abuela in Encanto. That she wasn't what's her name, Mother Gothel
Yeah.
from
Tangled.
yeah. um she was a victim of trauma, and it it leaves Encanto without a clear villain. So in terms of story, some people are going to struggle with that, but I get what they were trying to do with it. But that's not the same thing, right? That's the crone that they're playing with there. It's not the wicked stepmother. I do think the wicked stepmother needs a redemption arc because it wasn't the wicked stepmother's fault. It was the fact that her daughters were not going to have any quality of life unless she pulled a Mama Kardashian. Let's be aware. And they tried with Regina. They showed she had her reasons, but by making her inherently evil, they lost the plot on that one. And I really do think, because there is that, a woman is tarnished forever if she's assaulted thing, right? Like the turfs are playing that one to the hilt. It's the worst thing that can ever happen to somebody. And I'd like that to stop. The idea that a crime of violence of a sexual assault against a woman is the worst thing that can ever happen to a human, because as long as you're alive, there's still potential for good things, right? And we hamstring girls who have terrible things happen to them by sending the message that you are violated, you are dirty, you are less, instead of, if a guy gets beat up by another guy, he might be emasculated, but he's not seen as tarnished, right?
Yeah.
Masculinity is something that can be reclaimed, but because femininity and purity are tied instead of masculinity and strength, it's the story of a woman, especially later in life, is inherently one of loss, and we need to take that back. And that's the next time they do a fairy tale story, maybe we'll write one song. Maybe we'll go and take Hollywood by storm and do a fractured fairy tales properly. But that's what I'd like to see in
Yeah.
terms of the why of the story. And I don't consider that an ideology. I just consider that a story that hasn't been told. You know?
Yeah.
It's I'm coming at this from the point of view of a creative, not an advocate or an activist. It's just these stories have been done to death. We can use the exact same tropes and tell new stories the way men do with superheroes. Let's do that, please.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get a Moon Knight and a Bruce Banner, but women.
And my keynote is I'm like, tell another story, yes, but the princesses do not have to carry swords. They don't have to fire arrows. They don't have to wear pants. Please let them enjoy their pretty dresses and let there be power in the woman of valor.
Well, because the fact that we live in an age where Harry Styles can wear a dress,
but women can't.
What the fuck? Why do we still end up on the wrong end of this shit?
It's so weird because like I'm getting ready for a trip to a particular location that I will not mention yet. But I found an article that it's like, oh, can you wear a skirt in this place? And I'm like, is this a question? Do women not know how to wear skirts anymore? You wear a pair of tights, you have a skirt. It's not restricting.
Well, I think it's a question of is it going to end up over your head at any point sometimes?
Possibly. But in this case, I don't think that's what they were going for. It's like, look, as long as you're not wearing a pencil skirt and you've got enough space, you can do anything. You can do more than you can do wearing pants.
Yeah, as somebody who is a big fan of pencil and mermaid and hobble skirts, because I grew up in a microcosm that likes the badonk. Yeah, you can't run for a bus in those things. Like
true.
No, you can't. As much as I like the fierceness and the fuck you of the line, yeah,
they look great, but it's like I prefer circle skirts, and I can do anything in those.
I cannot get a good circle skirt that isn't vintage, and they're comfy. They're better than shorts, because if you want to wear a pair of bike shorts underneath them, you can, but it doesn't have that. I'm long in the body, and I'm long both in the spine compared to my legs, but also I'm long from kind of crotch to navel. And so shorts, I can't find a pair that
look, circle skirts are my specialty.
I love circle skirts. Yeah,
let's talk. I can probably make you one.
I have one dress, that red and white dress I have, the Betty Page number, that's a circle skirt, and I wear the shit out of it because it's practical. It's comfortable, it's practical, you can move in it, you can squat in it, you can bend over in it, and people aren't seeing your thong. It's actually a very practical garment, and damn it, if Harry Styles can wear one, I want to be able to. That's my new rule. If Harry Styles can do it, so could I.
Yeah. And I'm one of those women. I get dressed up and I get dressed for the day, and people are like, oh, are you doing something special? No, it's a Tuesday.
I think that's actually something I wish more people did, men and women alike, because
I wear lace petticoats to work.
As somebody who doesn't know how to girl, I do find that the reason I got into pinup modeling was it was a gender performance experiment. And I do think that sometimes if you need to channel something, you guys have all seen Boss Fight, I do that. The wardrobe does help a lot. Those costumes help me get into character.
Yeah. Well, there's always this irony of I get women who come into work and they're like, oh, you're always so put together. I wish I could do that. And I'm like, I have my makeup routine down to 15 minutes and it takes me 5 minutes to get dressed. I can do this in half an hour. So can you. Stop whining and just make the effort.
Well, yeah, there actually are tricks. You should do a guide for to do that, because the reason I tend to do a smoky eye or the really heavy eyeliner is it's way faster than a neutral face.
Oh yeah.
It's so hard to balance neutral stuff without it looking all blobby. I mean, I do basic makeup half asleep. I'm not exactly put together in my YouTube videos, but I admit part of that's deliberate.
Well, it's, I have an eyeshadow palette. It's the Mandalorian. And it's really pretty silvery browns but they're neutral colors. And it's like I can still make them dark and cool, but I'm like, they're not colorful enough. They look great on me, but I'm like, but they're not colorful enough.
Yeah, I've found out we're digressing. We can talk off air. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to the person who put down cold hard cash to have us talk about this. I actually think this worked out really, really well. Just a single show topic, but choosing can be a challenge. So if you would like to nominate and donate, I think women deserve to get paid the same way men do. Let us know. We might have to set something up so that there's a formal way to do it, but we still have to decide what we're going to charge on a regular basis, because this one was the friends and family special. But I think it worked well. And yeah, I'm going to go back to, how's it pronounced?
Calidus Chronicles.
Calidus Chronicles. I'm going to go back to reading that now because I'm enjoying the shit out of it. And I don't like romances. So I keep telling Song, I don't know how much of an endorsement this is that I like it, because I don't read romances as a rule.
I have been forced to acknowledge this is not a romance. This is an epic fantasy.
It's an epic fantasy with romances, but that is a part of epic fantasy.
It's a character-driven epic fantasy.
You know what? I like the men in it. And because they're different and they're not idealized. And I'm liking Hammond a lot more than I expected to going in. And then I went, wow, Hammond actually is my kind of guy. And
I can see that.
Yeah, I didn't see it at first because he was romance lead, right? And I was like, no, he's a nerd and he's bookish and he's polished and he's pretty. Yeah, I'm on Team Hammond.
my best friend and I have nicknamed him the Precious Nerd.
He is. That's my type. That's my type.
As you were saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, he's the Precious Nerd. Of course she likes him.
He's got the guys have got to be a little bit floofy, and bookish.
Yeah,
and he's both. I'm like, yeah, and I mean, I did not expect that going in. I expected some of the more everyman characters to be more my speed. I like the barbarians too, because they're barbarians. They're the whole
Darren Lagan soon.
The whole deliberately disgusting stuff with the merchandise in the gladiator arena. I won't spoil
it's historically accurate, for the record.
It is historically accurate, but the fact that you lean into the ew is so good. And this is, of course, me talking about this so that people will pick it up when it's out. And so let's talk off air about the blurb, because I do have some ideas for it.
Good. Okay.
And we'll end it. Thanks, everybody. Song, do you have anything else you want to?
Not at the moment. I really enjoyed getting to do this. Like I said, I watched the show back in 2021 and I thought seriously about trying to do a video essay, but I didn't have the resources or the time. And so when this came up, I was like, yes, please. I still have things to say.
every once in a while, things just come together, and this was one of them, for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and look forward to your comments.
All right. See you later.